Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our weekly, I guess, Star Wars discussion, where we are going through all 10 current Star Wars films leading up to the May 31st opening of Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland. It doesn't open in Disney World until August 29th, but I am Brian, and that is Angela.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I have this up on YouTube. I had to mute that. Anyway, hi. Yes, you said 10 videos, and I was like, wow. And we were talking right before this, and I realized we still have six left to watch
Yeah,
every week.
we're not halfway yet. It sounds weird because I still think of Star Wars as, oh, there was three movies, and then okay, there's three prequels, and now it's like, oh wait, there's been four more
I
now.
know.
So
That's crazy. I mean, like, we waited so long for them, and now we have them, and it's like, geez, they've really kind of built up in that time.
yeah, and this is today we are talking Solo, which is a Star Wars story. They helpfully tell us. And this is the first of the standalones that we're doing because it was not the first standalone released, but it is the first chronologically. And we're doing these in chronological order just because kind of give it a different perspective, I suppose.
Because we wanna. So,
Yeah, and we're
yeah.
done with the prequels now, so that was nice.
I know. Yeah, this was my first movie watching after the prequels, so I definitely have some thoughts after doing that.
hmm
If you are watching, please let us know where you're watching from. Please say hi. We already have comments coming in. Hello to Alyssa. Hello to Greg. Yeah, we're always curious to see where you're watching from. It's always interesting for us. So, yes, weird. Let's just start with Let's see, Brian, how excited were you for this film to come out? And you guys tell us, how excited were you for this film to come out?
I was a little apprehensive about this one. I like generally the movies that Disney has done since they have owned Star Wars. Rogue One was the first standalone, and I generally like that. I didn't like it quite as much as most people, but we'll talk about that next week, I suppose. But
Yeah.
this one, Han Solo has been one of my favorite characters. Probably the one I related to the most, actually. Which I don't know if that's a good thing to admit or not, but
You scoundrel.
yeah. And I didn't necessarily want to know everything about him, and I still don't know that I do. So I was a little apprehensive. That doesn't mean I didn't still see it, like at least within the first week it came out. But what about you? How are you feeling about this one?
I'm someone I love Harrison Ford. I think I don't know, I just really like him as an actor. I think he's amusing to watch on camera. So whenever they try to replace that actor, I know they needed a younger version, but whenever they try to like replace an actor, I'm always really hesitant to watch the film because I'm like, if they
hmm
screw this up, it's gonna be horrible to watch. So the first time I actually watched Solo was yesterday. It was the very
Really?
first time. I didn't see it in the theaters. I mean, I
Oh,
don't see movies in general because I have two toddlers. I'm not a toddler anymore, but two young kids,
hmm
so I don't have time to see movies. But yeah, that was the very first time that I saw it. So I really put this off for a long time.
I did not realize that. I just assumed you had seen it before.
No. So when
Uh,
I was telling you, I was like assuming like, oh, I think it's not going to be good. Like, no, I really hadn't seen it.
Oh, I did not realize that. This will be very interesting as we go along here. Have quite a few more people that have checked in. Abby Jolie from Mississippi,
Yeah.
or Beverly in Mississippi, I suppose.
Yeah, Abby comments quite a bit, so good to have you join us.
Sandy in upstate New York. Brandy from Birmingham, Alabama. Very nice. Ricardo from Buenos Aires. Awesome.
Oh,
Argentina is one of the places I would love to travel to,
oh, that'd be
along
great.
with most places, honestly.
Yeah.
Um, Ashley watching from Chicago. Lissa's in Norwood Park. Violet from Missouri. All over the place. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Um,
We
oh,
got
there's
Raymond.
there's somebody
Raymond.
else saying they didn't see it until last weekend, so you are not alone apparently in this.
No. And
Um,
like I'm a Star Wars fan. Like this is kind of blasphemous that it took me that long, but I've been like that with all of the Disney owned movies,
mhm.
except for Rogue One. I saw that in theaters and yeah. Actually the first two I did see in theaters, but no, since then Last Jedi I didn't see in theaters and
Oh.
Solo I didn't. So I've been behind.
Interesting. Yeah, and I mean your kids are at a kind of a tough age where you can't really take them to these kind of movies yet. I
No.
did make my kids go see Force Awakens. I'll tell that story when we get there, but that's the only one they've seen. They are not particularly interested in any of the others. Some background information: Solo came out May 10th, 2018. It is the most recent of the films we're watching. Um, it came out only 1 year after Episode 8, but 13 years after Episode 3, which is the movie it follows chronologically.
Hmm.
The timeline here is a little fuzzy. I saw some slightly differing reports, but it's all around the same area, and it's in that it starts somewhere around 13 or 12 years before the Battle of Yavin, or the events of Star Wars: A New Hope. Which would place it 6 years after Episode 3. We of course jump forward 3 years within the movie, so it's around 13 to 10 BBY in the chronology. That's the word I was looking for.
Um,
Um,
Brian, you have an invitation to Argentina, so you're welcome to go whenever.
yeah, that would be fantastic. I've
We gotta
seen I've seen lots of very very beautiful videos of Argentina. So
we got to work around all of these work trips to Galaxy's Edge that are coming
yeah.
up. We also have Tom from Iowa, Josh from Dallas. Um, let's see, Selena, soon to be Kissimmee, Florida, and
Very nice.
Dee's joining us. And then I think, oh, wait, I said Tom. Okay, well, yeah, Brian, do you want to start with the beginning?
Well, I see. D D brought up a good point that they did release Solo very very closely to Avengers: Infinity War, which came out April twenty
Oh, yeah.
seventh. So we're only looking at what, 2 weeks after Infinity
Oh,
War came out.
yeah,
But
that's competition.
that was not the only mistake that was made with the making of this film. We'll get into that probably at the end, actually. Um, so yeah, let's start running through the plot. Let me get my little plot thing up there. On the planet Corellia, orphan children are made to steal to survive by Lady Proxima and her gang, the White Worms. Lovers Han and Kira make an escape from the White Worms and bribe an Imperial officer with stolen coaxium, which is a powerful hyperspace fuel, for passage on an outgoing transport. But Kira is apprehended before she can board. Han vows to return for her and joins the Imperial Navy as a flight cadet. When the recruiting officer asks for his surname, Han says that he is alone with no family, so the recruiter gives him the last name Solo. And honestly, that last line is the only thing I can think of from this movie every time I think of it, and it is not a good memory.
It's just so original. Hang on, I'm cold. I'm grabbing a blanket.
I
Okay.
I personally I my problem with prequels in general, and we talked about this a bunch in when we talked about the prequels, is that they always assume that you've seen the later films, so they put in things that wouldn't make sense unless you understand the later films anyway. But two is that a lot of times the scripts, the screenwriters or the directors or whoever it is making these decisions decides that they need to explain everything.
You
And
complain about this so
I
much.
I just I had never once during the original trilogy watched thinking, Han Solo, that's a strange name. I wonder how he got that. We haven't been explained why Skywalker is a name, even though that's a
No.
pretty silly name. Why they're called, Darth Vader and Darth Sidious. Like, they don't really go
Yeah.
into the etymology of everyone's name, but for Han Solo, they decided to do it. And I think part of it was just kind of to be funny, but I found it just really, really annoying.
I know. I mean, I just thought it was a really I don't I just thought it was kind of dumb. That was
Yeah,
the reason
it
behind it.
it is. It's a very. I don't know why his name couldn't have just been Han Solo. Like, I don't know. I mean, I guess because he was an orphan, they figured he didn't need a last name. But yeah, I don't know. I groaned very loudly actually in the theater, and I was not alone in doing that. By the way, although I might have been the loudest. But because you can see it coming, like there's that moment where he asks for his name and he says he doesn't have one, and
And
he
there's
asks for
just
his
like long
family and
pause.
he says no, and I'm like, oh no, no, please, no.
You know it's coming.
Yeah.
No. Oh, there it is.
um
Yeah, there were a couple parts which we'll get to later. There are two times throughout the movie where there were things like that where it's just like, couldn't it have been done differently?
yeah.
But I mean, I guess it's all subjective, but I feel like the majority kind of agrees. Like that naming of Solo is just kind of silly. There's another part which I didn't like later on. But I mean, let's talk about the things that we did
Yeah.
like, because Ryan and I tend to get a little pessimistic with the things we don't like, and we need to be a little more optimistic. So,
Well,
um, I
and
mean, yeah.
and there are that's one of the things rewatching, because I saw this in the theater, and then I watched the first, I don't know, maybe 40 minutes or so on a plane, before I just decided I wanted to watch something else.
Mhm.
So this is the first time I've seen it all the way through since the theater, and I was surprised. Like there are some parts that I really like about this movie. A lot of the look of it, I think, is really really good. I
Yeah.
like I like the way that they look in general, and especially watching it right after the prequels. I really like the way one of the things I think Disney has done really well with the newer Star Wars movies is they've continued the kind of 70s grimier look of the
Mhm.
movies. Even when they're using CGI, they do their best to dirty it up a little bit. And I think Corellia is a really good example of that. Like it looks very industrial. I know part of it was filmed at like an old power plant in England, I think. So it looks really grimy and dirty, and I love the shots of the Star Destroyers being built there. What were your feelings about the whole like Corellia scene and the escape and all that?
Well, as far as the CGI, I feel like you can just tell about the film in general that George Lucas is not as present in the film, which I mean, for better or for worse, I kind of liked in some aspects. We kind of talked about the different characters, but just with the CGI films, the CGI effects, you can definitely tell that it was one of the most expensive films ever created, just by how beautiful the scenes are and everything.
Well, I think a lot of the money though was because they shot the movie
And
twice,
they didn't they
so
reshoot like 70% of it?
70%. Yeah, and that's I see
Yeah.
Jonathan in the comments talking about that, how there's not really a character arc for Han, and I mean there's a little one, but and that you can kind of tell that they switched. And I guess we might as well, rather than mention it a bunch of times, we might as well talk about that a little bit
Yeah.
before we move on. This movie, yeah, they Lord Miller, whose first names I always forget because they're always just done as a pair, as Lord and
Lord
Miller.
Miller.
They were the initial directors for the film and were let go pretty late into the process. Ron Howard was then brought in basically to clean up the mess and get the movie out on time. But yes, the rumors are he
And
shot 70% of it.
Ron Howard was actually asked to direct the prequels, but he didn't want to, and Spielberg was too, and they were both like, "No, George,
Yeah,
you need to do it." But then Ron Howard ended up taking over this film. Um, okay, so
yeah.
this is what I find amusing is that the original directors were replaced due to creative differences, and part of that was due to the writers, Kazdan.
Lawrence Kasdan and his son Jonathan were the script writers. Yeah.
So the writers didn't like that the directors were having the actors do more improv and they weren't filming the scenes word for word. And seeing as the script is the problem in most Star Wars films, and that's what affects the actors and kind of bashes them a lot, it makes me wonder if it would have made the film a better movie.
Well, I mean, I think improv on movie sets is tough because it depends a lot on the actors themselves.
And how
Um,
good they are at
I
it.
don't
Yeah.
know. I really don't know Alden and Aaron Ehrenreich. Is that it? Alden Ehrenreich, who played Han Solo. Um,
Yeah.
I really don't know him from much else, so I don't
I don't
know
know
what
him
he
from
could have done.
anything.
Donald Glover, I'm sure, could have improvised a ton.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but and that's what I don't exactly understand. Like Disney in general has been taking risks with some of these movies as far as who directs them. They've been doing that with both the Star Wars, especially the standalone Star Wars, and or I guess all the Star Wars and the Marvel movies.
Mhm.
And I mean, sometimes you get Ryan Johnson, who I love what he did in The Last Jedi, although that I know not everyone does. James Gunn with Guardians of the Galaxy had done a lot of like really small things. But then you also get, Gareth Edwards, who got basically dismissed from Rogue One, and Lord Miller, who get dismissed from this.
Mhm.
Um, but Lord Miller was a funny choice to start with because they their directing credits basically were only the 21 and 22 Jump Street movies, both
Those
comedies,
comedic ones,
and
yeah.
they were and animated movies. So they did Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, the Lego movies,
Hmm.
um, and comedies are basically where people improv constantly. A
Hmm.
lot of times you get funny people and let them do what they do, and you cut it into a movie is like half of these, and this
Yeah.
is not how Star Wars movies work.
Well, that's also the thing. They were expecting it to be more of a comedy, and then they're kind of
Yeah,
told, like, no, we just want a kind of
yeah.
comedic edge at some points. So I
And
think that was
I
part of
mean,
it.
of course, they also wrote Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which is an Academy Award-winning movie. So maybe they should have let them have a run at the script. Although Lawrence Kasdan, we should mention, is the one who wrote Empire Strikes Back. He wrote Return of the Jedi. He wrote Raiders of the Lost Ark. He wrote The Big Chill.
Hmm.
The problem with Lawrence Kasdan, I think, is that a lot of his really great films were written a very long time ago.
Hmm.
Most recently, he did the script for the Dreamcatcher, the Stephen King adaptation, which is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. And then he hadn't really done a full script for almost 20 years until he helped on the Force Awakens script. So, his son Jonathan has like 5 credits. He has 1 episode of Freaks and Geeks, 4 episodes of Dawson's Creek, 2 movies I have never heard of in my life in 2008 and 2012, and then Solo. So, I kind of, I mean, I understand Lawrence Kasdan is a legend and kind of letting him go, but I almost would have rather them seen, rather than let Lord Miller have a run at the script and maybe
Hmm.
had somebody else direct it then instead, because I think that would have maybe worked out to a better film. I don't blame Ron Howard in any way. I think he was literally just told, like, let's just get this done, please.
Right.
And he did,
No.
and he got it out on time. But yeah, he is listed as the sole director because he shot
So much of
reshot
the
so much
movie.
of the movie. So, sorry, that was a very long behind the scenes look. But yeah, it's in this case, it makes a lot of difference.
As far as comments, Tom said, I do watch your YouTube videos a lot and they're very helpful. I'm scheduling my December trip and using your crowd calendar. Thank you. Well, thank you, Tom, for the support. We appreciate it. And Dee said the action sequences were well done, but the interaction between the characters left little to be desired.
Yeah.
We will talk about that a little bit. As far as your original question, after we got off on a tangent about what I thought about
Mm-hmm.
Corellia. I really like that the shipyards were building the Imperial cruisers and Star Destroyers. It fit in really well with the recruitment process
Yeah.
for the Empire. I thought that flowed very nicely. I didn't like the Solo naming, as we talked about. And I just for some reason didn't think that they'd start him off with a girlfriend. I don't know. I mean, I guess it makes sense because I don't know, because there's always like something behind Han where there's more to him, blah blah blah. There's some depth, but so it kind of left me wondering where they'd go from there. But otherwise, I thought the start of the film was fine.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, starting him with the girlfriend, because I honestly would have, I feel like, and this is just some of what I see with Harrison Ford in other movies, I think, too, but especially as like Indiana Jones, I almost would have rathered see Han as kind of like what he thought as a ladies' man that never
Hmm.
quite worked right.
Right.
Where he thought he was very smooth with women, but it never actually worked. Like, I feel like that's, I don't know. That's how I kind of see young Han Solo, as thinking he's just the smoothest guy in the world, and having every woman either smack him or just walk away disgusted.
I can
Um,
see that.
But yeah, no, I agree. I think there was actually, I watched the deleted scenes this morning, and there was actually like another foot chase as part of this Corel. Like they went crazy with some of these chases in this movie. And another movie that, again, to break my record further, that is too long. It is 2 hours and 15 minutes, and it should not be over 2 hours. There is
Yeah,
just
I
nothing
have that
here.
complaint.
Yeah.
I we noticed that with episode one, the pod racer scene and maybe the battle scene in between Obi-Wan and Anakin in
Hmm.
Revenge of the Sith. There were a couple scenes here where I'm like, all right, let's wrap it up. Like I
Yeah.
started replying to YouTube comments because it was just getting a little too long.
Yeah. All
But
right.
okay.
So we jump to Bimban and Vander One here.
Yep. 3 years later, Han has been expelled from the Imperial Flight Academy for insubordination and is serving as an infantryman on Mimban. He encounters a group of criminals posing as Imperial soldiers led by Tobias Beckett. Han attempts to blackmail them into taking him with them, but Beckett has him arrested for desertion and thrown into a pit to be fed to a Wookiee. Able to understand the Wookiee's language, Han persuades him to cooperate to escape. Beckett, aware of the usefulness of the Wookiee's strength, rescues and enlists them in the gang to steal a shipment of coaxium on Vandor 1. The plan goes awry when the Cloud Riders, led by Enfys Nest, arrive, resulting in the deaths of 2 crew members and the destruction of the coaxium.
Yeah, the mysterious Wookiee that we do learn later during this sequence that his name is Chewbacca. You
Chewbacca.
might have heard of him. And I actually this Han meeting Chewbacca was one of the scenes that I did actually want to have explained to me.
I did
Um,
too.
so I'm glad they did it, and I found it reasonably satisfying the way they did it. I hadn't really had a picture in my head of how they had met, but
Hmm.
I don't mind it. It was fair. It was understandable enough and charming enough that you could see like, okay, they needed each other to escape, and then they just kind of realized they worked well together. That I like all of that. I also like kind of I do like the kind of, I guess it's not normalization of the empire, but like the kind of almost behind the scenes, like the recruitment stuff, and then seeing this infantry that is basically invading this planet because they aren't falling in line with the empire.
Hmm.
I wouldn't mind actually a standalone movie that was more about like the empire and the takeover and the kind of inner workings. Like if they could write a story in that world a little bit more. I think some of that would be really interesting to see.
Like kind of how it built up to that point and kind of grew in power and stuff.
Yeah, a little bit. Like, I mean, because even the newer movies with the First Order, like we just kind of jump in and the First Order is there already.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
and I know the prequels a little bit had kind of the building of, we saw Palpatine and his building of the Empire and how, but then even the end of that movie, all of a sudden they're already starting construction on the Death Star, and there are Star Destroyers and Tie Fighters, and it's like, oh, okay, like we're just the Empire now, cool. Um,
Um,
but
we both kind of had the same issue, and they kept killing the good characters.
yeah, that was weird.
Yeah, like Rio, I really liked Rio, voiced by I always say his last name, John Favreau, right?
Oh, is it? Okay, I didn't actually
Favreau.
look that up. Yeah, it's
Uh,
Favreau is how you pronounce it.
yeah,
I
good
didn't.
director. He's been in the most random things too.
He has,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, I thought he's a good character, and then later, oh
Val.
gosh, L3, and then
Oh, L
Val.
three through seven and Val. Yeah, and I like Val. I mean, Tandy Newton is great. She does really good work on Westworld, and
Mhm.
yeah, it was funny they introduced Val and Rio, and it's like, oh, okay, these are interesting characters. Oh no, they're both dead. Okay.
I know, it's like you barely get to know them, and then it's like, bye.
Yeah.
So that was a bit of a bummer. I would have liked to see their characters develop a bit more, but it was like 15 minutes you get, and then they're done.
Yeah. Yeah, and which I get. Val especially, I think, her death at least propelled the plot forward. It kind of forced Beckett and Han to work together and that kind of stuff. But Rio they could have kept around for a little bit longer. I think although again he was the pilot, so I guess they needed
Yeah.
him to be out of the way until so Han could fly the ship. But Yeah, this was also the part of the movie I noticed that they were just name dropping like madmen. I mean, I swear every other line mentioned. It took me so long to watch this movie because I kept stopping and looking up planets and
Hmm.
species and things that they kept naming, just see
Hmm.
if they tied in with anything else. And some did, some didn't. Rio yell something at some point. You've never been to a Minoc roast on Ardinia. Ardinia is the planet Rio is from. Minocs, of course, are the kind of bat-like creatures that they run into in the is it it is Empire, right? When they're in the big worm, when they find out they're in the big worm belly on the asteroid. Is that the motion
Yes.
picture or is that Empire? I don't remember. Either way,
I
the Minocs
Yeah.
are the bat-like creature things. Um, but they do that like
Yeah.
constantly. I mean, Beckett's talking about some planet he wants to go to. They're naming other smugglers. They're naming like it was for someone, and a lot of the stuff is references to like the Clone Wars and Rebels TV series. I found out I didn't really write all those down,
Hmm.
but there's a couple interesting ones later. But it is if you once you start paying attention to that, you notice it a lot. Like they're just naming things like crazy.
And you're like, yes, I get it. It all fits together. It's all Star Wars. Like we
Hmm.
understand. I I mean, with Woody Harrelson, I don't have a problem with him as an actor, but I feel like he's in all these random like fantasy movies. Like he's just like he was in the Hunger
Hmm.
Games, which I thought he was good in that. He was a
It was
good
one of
choice.
the better parts of the Hunger Games.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I actually really liked him. But then he was just randomly in this, and I didn't get it. I don't know why he was in it. I felt
I
like maybe they could. He was okay, but I felt they could have picked someone better. But that's just my opinion.
I didn't mind him as Beckett in this, but yeah, I do have a Woody Harrelson's just big enough that I see him and think, oh, it's Woody Harrelson, instead of really being kind of sucked into the character he's playing. Um, I think part of it is because he plays the same character in everything. He's always kind of a beat down, guy who you're not sure if you can trust or not. Like that's
Yeah, he's typecasted.
yeah,
I don't
which
know.
is strange because I mean we all basically met him as the like white bread farm boy on Cheers, um, but ever since I feel like White Men Can't Jump, he's basically just been that character
Oh
in a lot of
God.
other movies. So, but yeah, I actually didn't mind him in this. I thought he was. I think he did a good job, and I thought he was different enough that like, and I understand the character at least the minor arc that Han did have was basically because of Beckett. Like, that was Han kind of much like in the original trilogy, I guess. Han thinks he's the scoundrel, but is actually, good-hearted, I guess, which everybody else seems to know except him. And he never really does learn, I guess. So, okay, maybe it's not so much of an arc as a line.
Well, and I think maybe what it is for me is I think I always get a little distracted when I see like a relatively popular celebrity in
Hmm.
like a Star Wars film
Yeah.
because you just get a little thrown off. Like Amelia Clarke being in a Star Wars film.
And Amelia Clark, I still can't decide if she's a good actress or not. I like a lot of the stuff she does, but but in this, I she didn't really seem to bring anything. I mean, considering some of the other acting by I mean, like I said, I like Tandy Newton. I think she did good. Um, I think of course we'll talk probably too much about Lando, and and even Dryden Voss, Paul Bettany. I think he was very good, and a lot of them are chewing a little bit of the scenery. They're doing a little over the top, and Amelia Clark is very stone faced, and I
Yeah.
don't know if that was direction or if that was just how she acts, but I didn't really feel a lot from her in any particular scene.
Well, let us know your thoughts. And let's see. Maxfield said Kira was almost a jilted lover. That experience seemed important to his relationship with Leia. And Dee said, good point. And so, and I think that I do talk about Kira, so I'll just bring it up now. I can't really tell how I feel about her. I kind of feel like she does what she has to do to protect herself and survive, which I can respect. And for the longest time, I didn't know if I could trust her. But I do feel like ultimately she had to do some stuff to kind of get where she was when we see her. the time after she was captured.
Yeah, well, and I mean, she hints at that a few times that, she's
Yeah.
done some terrible things that she
They
doesn't
make it
want Han to
pretty
know
obvious.
about.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I mean, I get the idea of having, Han, like, it's basically his want in this movie is just to get back to her.
Hmm.
And then she kind of just blows him off at the end, which we'll get to. But yeah, I don't know. I wasn't sold on the character of Kira at all, and I don't know if that was. Like I said, I can't tell if it was written that way or if it was acted that way or both. But that was the one. But all right, let's. I do want to bring this. I really liked the whole train heist sequence. Kind of made me wish this was a little bit more of a heist movie in
Hmm.
general. That it was all like leading up to some big heist. It's beautiful. This is the part where it's like curving around the track. The backgrounds of this a lot of times are. Were shot in the Dolomites, I guess, and then of course CGI overlaid for the train and the actors. I'm not sure if the actors were ever in the Dolomites or not, but it's very, very pretty looking. And I like that sequence a lot. That was probably my favorite sequence in the film. Um, but all right, let's move on to the next segment. So Beckett reveals he was ordered to steal the shipment for Dryden Voss, a high-ranking crime boss in the Crimson Dawn Syndicate. Han and Chewbacca volunteer to help him steal another shipment to repay the debt. They all travel to Voss's yacht, where Han finds Kira, who has joined Crimson Dawn and is Voss's top lieutenant. Han suggests a risky plan to steal unrefined coaxium from the mines on Kessel. Voss approves, but insists that Kira accompany the team. She leads them to Lando Calrissian, an accomplished smuggler and pilot who she hopes will lend them his ship. Han challenges Lando to a game of sabacc, with the wager being Lando's ship. Lando cheats to win, but agrees to join the mission in exchange for a share of the profits. Easy question here, is Lando the best part of this movie?
Yes.
Yep.
No, I just think you can tell that he really put a lot of effort into really personifying and embodying Billy Dean Williams' portrayal of Lando. He really worked on the voice and the walk and just like the
Mm-hmm.
characteristics, and I really appreciated that. And he did it so well. And after watching him, I'm like, I would totally watch a Lando movie,
Yeah,
just Donald Glover.
I made a joke when the first trailer came out, and we first saw Donald Glover in the cave, and I think it was just a quick flash, like literally there was like a lightning flash, and it was just him standing there in the cape. And I made a joke then that I kind of wish this movie was called Lando, a Star Wars
Yeah.
story. And after watching it, that only got stronger. I
No,
he
he's so
he
good.
was so good as Lando, and yeah, you could see oops, you could see the influences from Billy D. Williams. That, yeah, like you said, he clearly studied the mannerisms and everything like that. But um, but he really got into the spirit of that character, and it was he was fantastic. I mean, I would watch I would watch Donald Glover in just about anything, and I think I do. But in this, like, I would love for him to do a Lando standalone movie, doing literally anything.
Oh, I know. He was so good. And really, I mean, Lando's really not in a ton of scenes in the last two original Star Wars films. So to
Not that
have
I
to watch
remember.
those,
We'll find out in a few weeks, I guess. But yeah.
yeah, I mean, unless he had like a lot of extra footage that they watched, that wasn't put in the film, he didn't have a lot to work with. And I know that he did meet with Billy D. Williams, and they kind of
Mhm.
talked and give him some advice and whatnot. But I mean, having to watch this over and over and kind of get it from that, like it was really believable, and I thought he did a much better job portraying him than what Alden
Yeah.
Ehrenreich did,
Yeah.
being Han.
Yeah, I didn't. I surprisingly didn't mind him as Han. I really thought I would not like whoever did Han Solo, just because that character is so much Harrison Ford.
Yeah,
But I didn't. But my problem with him is that it kind of. I managed to distance myself almost from the character of Han Solo watching him,
yeah.
which I don't think was the goal. And he kind of faded into the background a little bit. I ended up focusing more on Lando on L3, Dryden Voss, on on even on Enfys Nest. I was more curious about than I was about Han. Um, which is fine, but I just don't think that, being that it is called Solo, I have a feeling that wasn't the point. It was to make him a background character in his own movie.
Well, I mean, I guess I could best explain it this way. Um, Alden made me forget Han's personality in the original films. Donald Glover made me remember
Yeah,
Lando's personality in the original films.
that's a very good way to put it. Yes.
So, yeah. Also, Han's style of wearing fur
Oh
doesn't
yes.
really seem like his thing in the original film. So when I saw him wearing it, I was like, I'm
Hmm.
not like a fashionista. I'm wearing a Power Rangers t-shirt. But when I saw him wearing that, I'm like, interesting style choice. I mean,
Yeah,
okay.
you're right, and I didn't catch it the first time watching it. When I looked up the picture that is up on the screen now, I thought, oh yeah, that is definitely not. So, I mean, not now. I mean, Han Solo really doesn't change his outfit a ton, um, but in the later movies. But in this one, yeah, I just don't see Harrison Ford wearing that giant fur thing. Yeah, I am wearing my
No.
my Target brand Millennium Falcon shirt that I can't even wear to the theme parks anymore because I see so many of them. Um,
It's not original anymore.
no, it never really was. One other thing to mention, there was the droid battle in the cage that is happening, and the first droid we see are the Gonk droids, which first made their appearance on Tatooine, and they are the garbage cans with legs, basically.
Mhm.
And they looks like they just kind of attached like a saw arm and a hammer arm to them, but I cannot imagine that this was an interesting fight in any way. It is like the worst of like the BattleBots TV shows. But I mean, it's very funny because Gonk droids are always funny. But it is a weird battle to be watching. So, all right, we also meet L337 in this, which is Lando's first mate and droid and lover.
I know. I was very
Uh,
confused by this.
that was a
Emotional support robot. I don't know.
it's
That's what I'm just gonna stick with.
it's very heavily insinuated when Kira says, how does that, when L3 says we're not compatible, and and Kira says, well, how does that work? And she just says, it works. That's, I don't like it.
I
um,
know.
but
And then
anyway,
she makes another. L3 makes another comment to Lando about like do that thing that you. I don't know. I just chose to ignore it and be like, they
mm,
just have a really loving relationship emotionally. It was
yeah.
very
Well, they are
strange.
very connected emotionally, obviously. But yeah, yeah, it is very weird. But L337 as a character, what were your impressions of her?
I liked her. I mean, she's like a more independent, sassier version of C3PO.
Mhm.
Like if C3PO kind of toes the line and does everything he's supposed to because, protocol droid, that's a slave essentially. L3 just doesn't really care and does what she wants. So I really liked her, and again, another example of a character I liked that, meets her demise. Although kind of
Yeah,
meets her
only kind of.
demise.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I've actually liked her a lot, and um, I like that they were bringing attention to something that I know at least Star Wars fans have been asking for a long time, in exactly how sentient droids are. But it also does bring up some really uncomfortable questions about not just her relationship with Lando, but about droids in general. Because if she is this sentient, does that mean all droids are, and they are enslaved as she says they are? And then
Mhm.
later, when she starts popping off the restraining bolts, and as soon as she does, it all of a sudden turns into a droid revolt. So are the restraining bolts also like a mind control device for these like, I mean, that there are some very deep philosophical questions about AI nested in here that the movie kind of handles very lightly, but it could have gone very deep and very weird very fast.
Well, it's something that, like, over all of these films, you've never thought about because you're like, well, they're robots, whatever. But yeah, you definitely think about it more after that scene, which we'll get to
Yeah.
after the next paragraph.
Yeah, like how about right now? Are we
How about
ready to
right
move
now? Let's
on?
talk about it. Yeah. After reaching Kessel and the Millennium Falcon and infiltrating the mine, Lando's droid co-pilot L337 instigates a revolt. In the confusion, they steal the coaxium, but L3 is severely damaged and Lando is injured during the escape. With the help of L3's navigational computer, now hotwired into the ship's systems, Han pilots the ship through the dangerous and uncharted Kessel Run
Sounds
to
familiar.
to elude an Imperial blockade. The Falcon, badly damaged, lands on the planet Savarine to process the coaxium. So I thought at the beginning of the revolt is funny because it
Hmm.
starts out very nonchalant. She's like, like go away, go for your brothers and sisters, and the robot's like, okay, I'm gonna do that. So it starts out
And then
very
when they're
like,
walking on top of
doggy.
the consoles and everything,
I
yeah, it
know.
is. It's very cute. But yeah, it gets then they all start dying, which
Yeah.
is weird.
Then it's not cute.
I like this whole sequence.
I did too.
Actually,
It was entertaining. Yeah, I liked it.
because yeah, this is one of those where they did a good job of mixing in some humor with them doing what they actually are supposed to do. The whole time that Kira and Beckett are watching Han on the monitor as he's like trying to take out the one guard and then loading up the coaxium and all that stuff is amusing. That they're just literally just standing there watching as he's struggling with all of these things is funny. Chewie meets his family, and you put in the notes, is he hugging Mala?
Yeah.
Which, yeah, I mean, you have to assume that these are the same Wookiees from the holiday special. I assume they probably killed Lumpy when they took him, but or was Lumpy the child? I don't remember.
He had a longer name, I thought.
I don't know,
His
because there was
kid
like
had a
the
longer
old, the
name.
weird old one that just sat in the chair the whole time.
But
I
that
don't
was
know.
no, I think that was the grandpa. Yeah.
I don't know, but
His kid had a longer
it's
name.
been a very long time since I've seen the holiday special. But I also wonder with this, like the holiday special, is this also insinuating that Chewie just abandons his family, basically?
Yeah, I see, and it's such a brief moment that I actually had to rewind the movie to be like, well, did he meet the other Wookiee earlier and I missed it? But no, like he was just like hugged a random Wookiee and then left. I thought the scene was good overall. I did think that the Kessel Run scene was a little too long
Hmm.
for my liking. It was just an example of that. And then I kind of rolled my eyes at the fact that they had to show the Kessel Run scene at all and how many parsecs it took, but I
Yeah,
understand why they did it.
yeah.
It makes
That one didn't bother me quite as much because it was just such a throwaway in the movie, and it wasn't. It didn't really change anything. I agree. I like this whole sequence. I guess I would say up until they took off in the Falcon. Um, then I didn't mind when the TIE fighters in that were chasing them, but then they
mhm.
kind of shake all the TIE fighters. Then they have the run in with the Maw, which
Yeah,
apparently is a giant space squid,
yeah,
and it felt very like a hat on a hat to me, where it's like, okay, well, you don't need both of these chases, like you just pick one,
yeah,
because they already had a time constraint on the coaxium. Then and they're already saying, oh, we can't go the regular way because it takes too long. And
hmm
then there's an Imperial blockade stopping them from going the regular way, which they presumably wouldn't have taken anyway. Then they're being chased by TIE fighters. Well, okay, now you shake those. Oh, well, now here's another obstacle. It just seems like they could have done one of those things instead of three.
no, I
Um,
agree.
if they had just shown up and there was the blockade and they went in and then ran into the Maw, then fine. But to go through a whole, like, two separate chase sequences back to back was definitely something they could have cut out, I thought. But yeah, I don't have a lot more to say on this. It was enjoyable. It was fun. It was sad when L3 died, and then but I guess she lives in the Falcon forever now.
Yeah, at what point was she programmed in? Did she just say something and then it was done? Had she already been programmed in before? I was kind of confused at what point her navigational computer was put into the Falcon.
And I think they purposely didn't explain it all that much because they didn't really want to have to figure it out. So
Of
they were
all the
just like,
things
yeah,
that
she's
they do
there.
explain,
Yeah.
that's the thing that they don't.
Hmm.
All right, well, yeah, otherwise, I thought the scene was good. Like, I paid attention. The Falcon Kessel Run scene, again, got a little long for me. But no, I mean,
The whole end
so
of
far,
this
so good.
Yeah, the whole end of this movie, actually, I think it could have been edited better. Um, but because I think it drags in parts, but overall I think the story is fine. All right, so let's move on. Let's get on to Severine. During a confrontation with Enfys Nest, who tracked the team from Vandor 1, Lando flees in the Falcon. Enfys explains to Han that she and her crew are not pirates, but rebels trying to prevent the Syndicates and Empire from gaining power. Han becomes sympathetic to their cause and tries to trick Voss, but Beckett has already alerted Voss to the double cross. Voss sends his guards to kill Enfys, but the Cloud Riders ambush them instead. I'm having trouble reading now. Leaving Voss defenseless. Having anticipated Voss's strategy, Han tries to take the coaxium, only for Beckett to betray Voss, escaping with it and taking Chewbacca hostage. Kira kills Voss and sends Han after Beckett. She then contacts Voss's superior, the biggest surprise in the movie, the former Sith Lord Darth Maul, to inform him of the mission's failure and claim Voss's position. She blames the failure on Beckett, never mentioning Han. Maul then orders Kira to meet with him on Dathomir. So, did you know before you saw this that I think I might have actually spoiled it for you that Darth Maul was in this film, not knowing you hadn't seen it, but
I think you did tell me, but I didn't. I think I still didn't expect it. So I thought that was weird, and I'm like, why is he one of the top Crimson Dawn dogs? Like, it didn't make sense to me why he would be a part of it.
So when I first saw this, I feel like I had kind of heard that canonically Darth Maul was still alive, but it was one of those things I was just like, okay, whatever. So I was very surprised when he popped up. Of course, Darth Maul having been bisected by Obi-Wan Kenobi back in Phantom Menace. So anyway, the story, this is all from the Clone Wars cartoon show that I have since then gone back and watched, knowing that it was in there, and it is a very for something that kind of starts as a little bit childish as the Clone Wars can be. This is a very, very weird plot line. So Maul was presumed dead for over a decade, obviously, because he had been cut in half. But it turns out he had wound up on a trash planet that I do not remember the name of it off the top of my head. And he was kept alive basically with hatred for Obi-Wan Kenobi and the Jedi. He constructed a lower body for himself out of metal parts that looked like giant spider legs. And he was found by his brother, Savage Opress, and he was completely insane and had a spider body. It was weird. And then Opress, along with the help of their mother, Mother Talzin, who is a witch, they stabilized his mind and gave him more normal-looking robotic legs instead of the spider legs. But if you didn't know any of that, and I really didn't, honestly, even if you do know that, it doesn't make a ton of sense. But without knowing that, it is wild that he just shows up in Han Solo movie.
I'm sorry, but that whole thing is so stupid.
It's
that whole
real
explanation, weird. It's just ridiculous. I mean, and Josh even says the fact that after being sliced in half, falling down a bottomless shaft, and we see that he survives, that gives me hope that Mace Windu did survive as well. I mean, Josh, he makes a good point. That's just so dumb, and I don't really say that about a lot of Star Wars things. I think that's the first time I've ever said something about something actually being stupid. The fact that he survived.
Yeah, it's bad, and I think they just wanted to bring the character back, but like you just can't at that point. But anyway, as far as him and Crimson Dawn, he is basically the leader of Crimson Dawn, I guess. He started the organization and kind of runs it from the shadows. I wonder, one of the questions I asked later, actually, with this reveal so late, it almost makes it, and now with Kira taking over for Dryden and going to meet him on Dathomir, which is Darth Maul, or just Maul, I guess now he's not a Darth anymore. Maul's home planet. It's also where the Rancor is from, is Dathomir. It almost sets up a sequel, which I was thinking, well, they really weren't going to do a sequel, but I'm wondering, when I looked it up, I actually looked up the rest of kind of Darth Maul's canonical story, and I guess in the Rebels cartoon, Darth Maul ends up dying on Tatooine because he goes after Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I almost wonder if they did this, thinking that if they did, because there's been an Obi-Wan standalone movie rumored for quite a while. I wonder if maybe they were going to use him in the Obi-Wan Kenobi movie and do part of that story of him going to Tatooine, and having Darth Maul kind of be the climax of the Obi-Wan movie too, which is why they maybe brought him back. But because that would make more sense than doing another solo movie. I mean, they definitely aren't doing
Yeah.
another solo movie now. This one did not do great at the box
No.
office. So,
Ugh.
what would you think about an Obi-Wan standalone movie?
I mean, he goes into isolation just like Yoda does. Like, what is there to really?
Well, and
He watches over Luke.
that's kind of the problem. You'd have to almost figure out something for him to do without leaving Tatooine, or like, with having someone else come and take over for him for a little while. Like, you couldn't just have him like leave. Like, that's not Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
The only thing that
Make
does
it very clear that
yeah
he doesn't leave.
the only thing that although I wouldn't mind seeing kind of a single planet movie, with just him, maybe like, because maybe there are people coming to look for Darth Vader's son. Maybe somebody finds out he's alive, and they do come for him, or Obi-Wan has to track down a bounty hunter that has found out about Luke or some on Tatooine, or I mean, there are stories in there, but it would definitely be a much smaller scale than most of the Star Wars movies, and I'm just not sure if they're willing to do that.
Well, if it would fit in, well, I was thinking it would fit in if Han was going to Tatooine to do that big project, and Darth Maul somehow
That's
comes in
true.
and
He is
Obi-Wan's
also on his way
there.
to Tatooine. Yeah,
Because they're all going to be on Tatooine, especially if that's where Darth Maul or Maul dies.
yeah,
Do you want to know if any of this will be integrated into Galaxy's Edge? I mean, it seems like they're kind of focusing on like the
yeah.
third,
The main
three
set of
prequel.
movies. Yeah.
So, I don't know how much of this will really be focused on.
I mean, there are parts. I think. I mean, we know the promo shots. You can buy a Darth Maul bust. So I mean, in that way, there will be. I wouldn't be shocked if you could buy, like, in the First Order shop or something, maybe something with like the Crimson Dawn logo, the kind of
Oh yeah,
circle and circle, something like that.
merchandise for
Um,
sure.
and they mentioned in with all the name dropping, uh, the party kind of thing, when Han first meets Dryden Voss. Kira asks one of the other women there if she has been attentive to Doc Ondar. Doc Ondar, of course, is the proprietor of the Den of Antiquities in Galaxy's Edge. So, there are some crossovers, but with the disappointing performance of this film, both critically and financially, I'm gonna guess they're not gonna overlap it a ton. I think they're
Yeah.
gonna focus on the main movies, and that's where they're probably going to leave it.
Well, and Ron Howard said he would only do a sequel if the fans wanted it, and I don't know how much the
Yeah.
fans do. So,
Speaking of the Obi-Wan sequel, one of the things that does make me a little hopeful for it is that Ewan McGregor has already said he would love to do one. So,
well, and I was
um,
thinking about that. Like him and Maul are similar ages, so they could both kind of
mhm.
realistically do it, and it would work.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
they're
he's
supposed to be older.
he's Ewan McGregor is by the time, if they actually did it, he'd be 15 years older than we last saw him. So, time wise, I mean, his time wise now would work out better than the time between Revenge of the Sith Obi-Wan and A New Hope Obi-Wan, because
Yeah,
that 20 years was real rough on Obi-Wan apparently.
yeah.
Um, but that would be neat. So, one of the other things I like, I really love the look of Enfys Nest in this film.
Oh
Just
yeah.
the kind of tribal looking thing, and that really wicked staff she carries that seems
Yeah.
to have like a stunner thing and a thing that like can make like make the ground shake when she and the ambush when she jumps off and hits the staff into the ground and it
Hmm.
ripples out is very, very neat. I love that it's like a teenage girl
Oh,
when
and
she takes the
she's
mask
just
off.
She's so beautiful too. Oh my gosh,
Hmm.
she's such a good choice. Um, I thought she did
But
a good job acting too.
But here is, I forgot to bring this up. This is Darth Maul, the hologram. You can see, this is the full body shot, and you can see his robotic legs in there, which is weird. I like very much that they play just a hint of Duel of the Fates when he lights his lightsaber.
Yeah,
Um, you can
and
also see in this picture, Dryden Voss apparently has a holocron on the left hand side, the triangle shape. That is a Sith holocron. Holocrons are knowledge storage devices, mostly used by the Jedi, but the Sith do have them. The Jedi ones are kind of squarish, like a almost like a dodecahedron, like the 12-sided thing. Whereas Sith ones are usually the pyramids. You can buy both in Galaxy's Edge.
well, and John Williams did not do the whole score. He
No,
only did the theme for Han,
yeah,
and then there was another one who did it. So, I mean, that's kind of interesting as
yeah.
well. But
They
I thought that they were very cohesive though.
Yeah, no, and same with Rogue One, which we'll talk about next week. But that was somebody else did the score for that. So, and I like that. I like if they're going to do these standalone movies, I like that they're trying to make them different in feel, in structure. They should. They can't all just be copies of the main movies.
Mm-mm.
Um,
One final thing before we move on. I don't like Voss's exposure of Beckett double crossing him. I
mhm.
thought it could have been scripted out better. It was just like almost too simple. Like, oh, bring me the coaxium. Oh, how'd you replicate it? Oh, I know
Yeah,
you
yeah,
double crossed me. It was just like, it was just too easy. But I think it was made better by Han counter
yeah.
planning them. It made it seem a little less stupid as we
Yes.
put in our notes.
Well,
So
and
I
and
liked it better.
and Han. I mean, we Han isn't always the Han that we know isn't always the sharpest, but he's not a fool either.
Mm-mm.
And it would have seemed foolish if he just walked into this trap that you could kind of see coming.
Right.
So I like that. Yeah, he basically did double cross the double cross,
Mhm.
and got out of it. All right, we are running long as usual here. So why
I
don't we
know.
go into this last section?
Okay. Han catches up to Beckett and confronts him, shooting Beckett first. Kira leaves in Voss's yacht while Han and Chewbacca turn the coaxium over to Enfys, who offers Han a chance to join the rebellion against the Empire, which he declines. She gives him a vial of coaxium enough to buy a ship of his own. Han and Chewbacca locate Lando and challenge him to a rematch in Sabacc, once again wagering the Falcon. Han wins, having stolen the card Lando was keeping up his sleeve in order to cheat, and he and Chewbacca leave for Tatooine, where a crime lord is putting together a job. Dun dun dun! I wonder who that crime lord is.
Yeah, yeah. No one could possibly know. And these, I will say, these are the kind of references that I enjoyed. I liked, I like that they're leaving for Tatooine, but they don't necessarily mention Jabba. Um, I him shooting first made me very very happy. I think Han getting the advantage on Greedo in the theatrical cut of the of Star Wars the motion picture is a really good character moment for Han. It shows, like we were just talking about, that he is not a fool.
Mm-hmm.
Does not necessarily play by the rules. He will cheat, and he will kill someone if necessary to save his own life. I think the change when they changed it to Greedo shooting first and then them shooting at the same time in later versions, I thought was just unnecessary. I don't. If it was like that originally, I wouldn't hate it, but I don't think it needed to be changed either. So I
Mm-hmm.
like that they did this where, I mean, mid sentence, Beckett is talking and Han just shoots him in the chest, which and even Beckett says, "That's the right choice. I would have shot you."
Oh
Like,
yeah.
and I really, and I also love that they didn't, really put a button on it and have Beckett say something like, "You did it, kid. You shot first," or something, that would have kind of ruined it, I think.
But it really comes full circle though with Val dying,
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think what it was it Rio said like Val says no one should die alone or something and then as soon as Han shoots him he runs over and doesn't let
Yeah.
him die alone. So I mean it makes sense why Val died and Rio died. It comes full circle, which is good.
Yeah.
Makes sense at the end. Why do you think Kira left?
I think it was. I think it's a complicated reason. I think it is, and this is another one of those things that I'm glad they didn't try to overly explain. If it was
Yeah.
one of the prequel movies, I think we would have gotten a long scene where Kira explained everything she was about to do. Um, but I think it was a combination of embarrassment. She is clearly very embarrassed about things she has done between when she's in the 3 years since she last saw Han. She would prefer him not to know those things.
Mhm.
I think it is a little bit of a hunger for power. I think she knows that now she can be the head of this organization, and she wants that and doesn't want to bring him with her necessarily. Um, and I think it is that she knows she has, or she think I think she thinks she has to do this. I think she is far enough into this Crimson Dawn life that she thinks she cannot get out and doesn't
Mhm.
want to pull him in. So I think some of it is that she is protecting him from that life by taking it on herself. But I think part of her also wants that, and knows that he can't come with her.
Yeah, I think that all makes sense. I think that they're told like once you're in Crimson Dawn, and they say this like once you're in Crimson Dawn, you can't leave. So I think she's
Mm-hmm.
committed herself to it. I do agree with you. I think she wants that power. She's already climbed up the ranks so much. She now has Voss's position.
Mm-hmm.
She's going to work super closely with Maul, who's like the head of it. And I think that she covered for Han by saying that she wasn't there.
Yeah.
Beckett acted alone, and maybe by her being around him, that would bring him into it. So she's protecting
Yeah.
him in that way too.
Yeah. I mean, she's clearly protecting him from Maul.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and I think she knows, and I mean, she says things along that lines to him that, well, I can't just leave; we'd be hunted.
Hmm.
And so I think she also knows that. I think there are probably a lot of reasons, and they're all under space and what we know about the character. They all make sense, which is a good point for the script. Kira, I think, has probably a better written. I think her motivations are clearer in some cases than Hans himself.
No, I agree.
He has very simple motivations, which I think is kind of the point. I think he's
Hmm.
supposed to seem like kind of a simple kid that then gets toughened up by Beckett and by Kira, and all these things that happen to him then in the next 12 years or whatever, or 10 years until we see him again. So I that is not I think this could have been a better movie. I don't think I would have ever loved a Han Solo movie
Hmm.
like this, but I think it could have been really good. I think if they had gone a little bit more fun, would have been interesting. I'm not sure if it would have been better, um, but it wasn't bad. I don't know how much I will watch this one again.
Yeah.
But if it's on, like I said about the prequels, if I'm on a plane and it's one of the movies on there, I might turn it on again or at least skip to certain parts, something like that. What about you? How do you think you will watch this again?
I mean, like if Michael wanted to watch it, because I don't think he's seen it yet either, I would watch it with him. I thought that, I thought they did a pretty good job as far as like they didn't leave any loose ends. I felt like they explained how Han met Chewie, how he met Lando, how he won the Falcon fair and square, which, for being, you know, uh, someone who doesn't always play by the rules, I mean, that's it's more or less honorable, especially since Lando cheated first.
Yeah.
Um, and it sets up the film where it doesn't need a sequel, but it could have one if it needs to.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily be against there being an Obi-Wan movie that Han Solo showed up in for
Right.
a little bit, but that could be interesting. But yeah, it's fine. I don't I I'm kind of in the middle on this one. I don't think it's great. Um, it's probably it's probably my least favorite of the non prequel Star Wars. It would be I
Hmm.
probably, and honestly, it might be near Revenge of the Sith as far as the way my feelings about it. But it's I do like I love I like a lot of the characters in it. I like parts of it, so I'm I'm always
Yeah.
happy to watch them.
I was pleasantly surprised. I guess I thought it'd be more boring than it was, but
Hmm.
yeah, it was fine.
And if it was an hour and 45 minutes, I think it would have been really good.
I think I would have enjoyed it more. But yeah, I mean, overall, positive things overall. I really don't have any too many negatives, so that's good for us since
Yeah,
we're so critical on these films for liking
it will
Star Wars.
it will get better. We're getting into better territory. Next week is we are back next week, probably the same time with Rogue One, and then we get into the original trilogy, which will be fun. I haven't seen the original trilogy in a few years, so
Yeah. Also, we should bring up Brian and I are always looking for podcasts to listen to and possibly collab with. So if there are any good Disney or non-Disney podcasts that you really love listening to, please leave them below because we're always looking to add to our repertoire and listen in our free time. So
and
just send them.
specifically ones that you think would also guest on our podcast, the Touring Plans podcast. That would be helpful. We've been trying to get some outside opinions, outside of the Touring Plans family opinions
Yeah.
for this stuff.
And we've really, really enjoyed having the guests on. They've all been fabulous so far. So please let us know.
And that will do it. Thank you very much for watching. Come back next week for Rogue One or Rouge One, depending on how you spell it. And thank you all very much.
All right, have a good one. Bye, everyone.